Recently, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, traveled to the United States to meet with the president of the United States, Donald Trump. And Trump was asking him, what have you done about the recent issues going on in South Africa? The tension between these two countries has gone on for too long, but the whites are saying they're being marginalized in South Africa. So lots of issues has gone on in South Africa. And you may ask, how did this come about? There has been issues going on, and the United States is siding the white farmers in South Africa, saying that they are being marginalized, that South Africa is a terrible place for white farmers to live. South Africa is one of the countries in Africa that is doing well economically. We say, is amongst the BRICS nations, among the G27. Let's consider some of the issues that has gone on in South Africa that has resulted into the white farmers shouting that they are being exploited or they are being marginalized in South Africa. In 1652, the European boats or the Dutch people came into South Africa, a place called Cape of Good Hope, for refreshment. But with time, they decided to stay back, and sometimes they bring in some crops to plant in those places where they stay. But before then, they were original people who stayed or who lived, indigenous people who lived in South Africa. The Khoikhoi, the Sans, the Xhosa people, the Zulu, they originally are the indigenous people of South Africa. History does not forget. They may tell you that South Africa was discovered by the Europeans, but people were already living in South Africa. So the popular historical landmark called the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa is a place where the Dutch is the first point of contact of the Dutch into South Africa. Then came the 1700s when the British traders, the British explorers found their way also into the Cape of Good Hope. But before then, the indigenous people called that spot Hugh Gaias, meaning a place where the clouds gathers, which holds spiritual meaning for the indigenous. The British came in and took control of all of that. They won over the Dutch and controlled the whole colonies and went way into the interiors to colonize people of the original people of South Africa. But do not forget, the Khoikhoi, the indigenous people had a way of life. They had smaller communities, organized communities where they are living. They had kingdoms, mostly cattle rearers, farmers. They also had threats amongst them, amongst the communities where they lived. They had a way of life before the invasion of these Europeans. As they came to South Africa, they noticed that the weather was very conducive for them in South Africa. So the British and the Dutch, as they went back and forth during the sea travels, they started nurturing the idea of colonizing or taking over the lands of these people. We have some South Africans who are white, of European descent, and majority of blacks, who are the original owners of the lands in South Africa. The British or the Europeans set up a permanent presence in modern-day South Africa through a union called the South African Union. This union, established by the British, championed the policies that introduced apartheid regime and massive land takeovers from the indigenous people that happened in South Africa during the time past and still present up to today. 75% of lands in South Africa are owned by the white minority, who are just about 10% in South Africa. Some towns and cities like Orania and Western Capes are relics of apartheid regimes, racial segregation in South Africa, because blacks are not permitted to stay there or even to come for labor, to come work in those towns in South Africa.
So this is Owendale?
This is Owendale.
A community that you and your husband founded?
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's special about it?
Special about it is the fact that we are only white people staying in the town.
Yeah.
Only white people are allowed to buy in the town.
And I saw a black gentleman on his way out just now.
That's right, they're working for us, but they're not allowed to stay in the town. God doesn't want us to mix, and that's why we stay apart from the blacks.
You make it sound almost as though we're a different species.
Could be.
Places in Pretoria, Johannesburg, Kleinfontein, Orania, blacks are not permitted to own lands in this place. You are only qualified to own land in these places if you are a white farmer. That is the only time you are permitted to buy or qualify to get a land, a piece of land or property in this town. This town has large expanse of lands managed only by white Africans or white residents. It has schools, it has banks, it has hospitals, it has clinics. It has even its own currency inside of South Africa. They don't use the regular currency that South Africa use. They use a different currency called Aura, or their own peculiar currencies that is to them, to the town. So the white farmers feel that no other person, the blacks are not supposed to live together, or as a black South African, job will not be given to you in these towns. So as against what South Africans believe, that this is a continuation of apartheid regime in disguise. These towns were established when apartheid regime was still in full blown, or in full bloom in South Africa. So the black South Africans still don't understand that they believe or perceive these towns that blacks are not permitted to come in as extension or relics of apartheid regime in disguise. But the white South Africans are saying no, that these towns are meant to build up their history, to keep their self-determination, and also to further their European values and culture, to keep it alive, to keep it warm, that they don't want to lose any of the value by integrating into the larger society, that with these towns being in place, for the white Africans gathered together, or clustering up together as one people, that they'll be able to keep up their culture alive. Most of these farmlands are handed from generation onto generation, parents to children, way back, all the way from the 16th century to their children, over 400 years. Most of these large expanses of land are used for farming, and in some cases for sports and gaming centers. The black South Africans are not buying that anymore. They are coming up to say, we need these lands back. South African populations, black people of this present age needs these lands back from this white minority, that they need this land. This is their land. This is their inheritance taken away from them forcefully by the Europeans that came in or invaded South Africa. Julius Malema's song is even causing more controversy in what is going on in South Africa. His song about Kiss the Boer, which is directly pointing to the white South African farmers who took over their lands, and is not even making things easier. People are clamoring, the agitation is coming up more higher, demanding that the government is too slow in the Land Expropriation Act. The white farmers are saying they are not giving up their lands without compensation. There must be compensation from the government of South Africa before they can be able to give away their lands. South African government has come up to say that the lands being expropriated from the whites are for the best interest of the public, that most of these lands will be used for public interest, to build public facilities and make it for the general populace of South Africans. Internationally, it has melted the diplomatic relations between South Africa and the United States. The United States condemns the Land Expropriation Act in South Africa, saying that South Africa is marginalizing the whites, that in fact, South Africa is very unsafe for white Africans to live. So let's keep it going. Drop your comments in the comment sections. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.